So, for people who don't, understand creation with electronics and computers, they go back to the early days, and I had the pleasure of interviewing Giorgio Moroder and talking about electronic music, but that's like a full generation or so before
Yeah.
you started messing around with circuit boards. Is that the idea?
Not at all. No, that might be if you're electronic, but I'm not electronic. So I'm samples mainly. I sample from old records.
Aha. Aha.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the electronic records.
And there's a few like little synthesizer bits on the album, but they're just to back up the samples really, and they're just played on a cheap ass computer program, But it doesn't matter because they're very quiet in the background, so you don't really hear them. They're just kind of backing up the sample a bit or whatever.
So I don't, I don't understand the creative process of how you would pick samples and decide to create music. Can you enlighten me a little bit?
I guess it's a feeling. It's kind of hard to say. I'm such a record addict anyway, like vinyl, and especially I don't really care. I don't need to buy good records. I just want sounds that I like, and whatever the fuck, maybe beats or anything really, anything I can sample. And I don't want to pay too much money, so I tend to go to thrift stores, or like we call them charity shops in England. Mm-hmm. And it's basically like dead people's records, like old 1950s, 60s records, because they've died and the family don't know what the fuck to do with. And it's so cheap, and I get most stuff from that really, just old dodgy records. That's my.
So
I don't know. I love it. That's my thing.
Your ear is open when you're listening to like what I want to grab a sound when you.
Yeah, and naturally I don't have to like really pay attention or something. I'm just flipping through the record, and I get really angry if I can't even take one thing off a record. So every fucking record has to give me something back. It might just be jing, one little chord, or a snare drum, or whatever the hell. But I've got to get something off it.
Yeah, it's good to set a standard.
Yeah, I mean, it's also that gives me a slight sort of limitation, which I like. I try to place kind of creative limitations on myself because I don't want the whole world to be my oyster or whatever. I need to be penned in a bit with. So I'll make up stupid rules for myself, like, right, you've got to make the next track just out of this next record, whatever the fuck that is, even if it's shit, and I'll do that, and the track might not be good, but I just like having those sort of limitations. I find it makes me more creative, the tighter box I'm in or something. But if I'm in a completely free environment, it's like, I don't know what to do anymore.
Right.
Too many options. Many options.
So the record and the samples actually inform the composition itself, or do you have a groove or an idea of what you want to?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of different every time. So I'll often start with a groove, but then it's really hard, I find, to put things into that groove. So I tend to work kind of the other way around, with more musical bits first and then the groove after, because that seems like it generally works better when I've spent too long on a groove or a beat, and then I try to add to it. It's like, oh shit, whatever I add to it is actually is making it worse or something. It's taking away from these fucking hours I've spent on the beat. Now you can't even hear that little hi-hat roll I did or whatever the hell. So yeah, I tend to do the beat after, once I've got a bit of music or a loop or whatever that I like.
And so how long does it take to finish a full piece?
Well, like this with James, it's different because we're going back and forth and stuff. And it's also different these days. Like in the 90s, I couldn't save music, so I knew if I turned this shit off, I'd lost this track, so you had to just keep everything on until you'd finished the track. And so that would be maybe a day or 2 days for a track. But if you're really fast, you can do like 2 tracks, 3 tracks a day, maybe, if you're on a roll. But these days it's different because you can save everything. So I'll just sort of do little bits and then stop and do another thing and keep myself more entertained, bouncing around between a few tracks, And I've got some tracks that I've never really bothered to finish these days, but I could still go back to them if I wanted and change them, because you can save everything so easily these days.
Yeah, you must have a pretty comprehensive library of collected samples.
Yes, yeah, that's also a good thing about these days. In the 90s, every time I had to sample things again, like, I need a kick drum, right, let me find a record with a kick drum or whatever. But yeah, now I've got like 1,000 fucking kick drums in a folder.
There you go.